And welcome to another edition of the Basic Thoughtonomics podcast. I'm your host, Chris Grosso, and for this episode, I'm very honored, humbled to have this guest on. A couple months ago, I had on Chris Russo, and I was very starstruck, very nervous about having this guest on. And same thing with this guy. To me, he's in that stratosphere of just sports personalities, the best at their craft, at what they're doing. So like I said, very honored to have him on. He is the longtime voice of the Brooklyn Nets, also broadcaster for the NBA on TNT, also for college basketball on CBS, NFL on CBS. He is the great Ian Eagle. And Ian, thanks so much for joining me on this podcast episode. How you doing today?
Yeah, Chris, doing well. I'm happy to be here. I'm shocked that you're having a guest on not named Chris. I thought that was just part of the deal.
Oh, no.
All of your guests would be Chris. So to have an Ian on, this is a huge breakthrough.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I also just wanted to ask, I texted you the other day. We were confirming that we would do this podcast Thursday, and you had sent me a bird emoji in there, or an eagle emoji. Is that like your signature?
Yeah, I feel like the Apple people put that on the emoji list for me. To me, it's a very simple way to end a text, and
I love it.
Without saying my name. It's weird. Texting etiquette is very interesting. I think if you get to a certain age group, they're often using their name or "Hi, how are you? This is Gene," and I think as you go younger, you skew younger.
Yeah.
There's less of that. It's more fragmented. It's a way for me to end a text without having to write Ian, and the hope is everybody can figure out it's an eagle.
I love it. No, that's great. Yeah, I just want to ask you about the bird nickname. To be honest, I love it. It's just to me, it just oozes swag, for lack of a better term. Just that one syllable nickname, there's just something about it. It's just short and easy to say. Do you like the nickname Bird?
Oh yeah, really comfortable with it. Bob Raceman started using it in his New York Daily News media column way back in the early '90s. But when I got the Net TV job and I started working with Bill Raftery, he just made it part of his nomenclature. It was used maybe 20 times a game. He didn't call me Ian. He just called me Bird. So after a while, if people are watching and as the viewership grew, as the Nets actually improved and became a legitimate team in early 2000s, I think the name spread a little bit. And yeah, it's very comfortable. It's funny though, when I would work NCAA games with Bill, college basketball games, he would often throw it out there on a national audience, and people didn't necessarily make the connection, and they thought Bill was losing his mind. They thought he was calling me Vern, like Vern Lundquist.
Oh, that's a great story.
And I would get texts from people saying, "Why is Raph calling you Vern?" I said, "No, he's saying Bird. Hey, Bird, not Vern." Very big difference. There's a B and a V sound, but no, I'm cool with it.
Oh yeah, I love it though. Yeah, just wanted to ask you about that, and I guess we'll get to everything going on in the world here, but I just wanted to first ask how you're doing. How's your family doing? Everything okay so far?
Yeah, everybody's good, Chris. Thank you. My wife, my son, my daughter were here in New Jersey, and initially when all of this hit, we were spread out all over the place. I was in San Francisco, my son was in LA. My daughter was studying in Australia, and my wife was visiting her in Australia. So I had just done a Golden State Warrior Clipper game for TNT on a Tuesday night. I stayed in San Francisco the next day. I was waiting for the Nets to come to town because they were playing the Warriors on Thursday night. And then I was going to take a red-eye Thursday night for the Atlantic 10 Championship in Brooklyn on Sunday, and that would have been Selection Sunday in the NCAA tournament. So my schedule was definitely tight, and I was pushing it a bit with the late week net game and then a red eye back to the East Coast. But I'm accustomed to this. I've been doing this for many, many years, and I know what my limits are. And it was just a very surreal feeling in San Francisco. They were way ahead of things. The streets were basically empty on that off day, that Wednesday. I moved from one hotel to another, and I realized that this was not the San Francisco that I knew. I'd been there so many times. There's usually hustle and bustle. The streets are packed, and there was basically nobody out and about. Got to the new hotel. My room wasn't ready. I said, no problem. I'll go grab something to eat. I went to this lunch area that I've been to so many times, and again, completely empty. So I certainly had a sense that things were changing and things were turning, but I did assume that the Net Warrior game would happen on that Thursday night, and that was supposed to be the first game with no fans.
Right, yeah, I remember that.
So we were dealing with all the logistics of that, where the broadcast location was going to be, where the radio guys would be, where the home TV and radio would be, and everything really came to a head that night, that Wednesday night, when President Trump addressed the nation, and there was a travel restriction in place. Then Rudy Gobert's positive test went public. NBA suspended play. I ended up jumping on a red eye that night and got home, and then got my wife on a flight from Sydney, Australia. My daughter stayed for a little longer until they determined that they couldn't continue with the program. And then my son, who's working with the Clippers, he eventually got the word that he could travel. So about a week or so later, he ended up coming back to the East Coast. But everybody's feeling good. Fortunately, we all get along very well. It's a very harmonious house, and it's been an unexpected family reunion with very little drama.
Yeah, I'm curious about that, how some families, roommates are doing this time, whether they're getting sick of each other, getting tired of each other, but glad to hear you guys are doing good. And just curious what you're doing to kill some time in light of the social distancing measures put in place. What are you doing to stay occupied?
Yeah, this would obviously be a really busy time of year for me with NBA playoffs. And then usually right around next week, I would travel to Paris for the French Open, which I've done the last 15 years.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, which is a really cool assignment, and I've enjoyed it. It's for Tennis Channel. Love the people there. Love working with that group. So all of that has been tossed to the side. And just the normal routine of preparing for games and waking up and getting laser focused on the task at hand. I'm not obviously experiencing that right now. Nobody really is. There are people that are working, and it's a different normal for them, working from their homes, and I get that. For me, it's been a lot of joining people on podcasts and sports radio shows and Zoom calls, and trying to be productive in some way. I've watched some of my stuff back from this past NFL season, a little bit of basketball here and there. I get caught going down rabbit holes on the internet when you just start watching highlights and games, and not things that I even was involved in, but just historic moments. Was intoxicated by The Last Dance, and my wife, my son, and I. Yeah. So all of that has been cool, and I would say I'm not dominating with the streaming like I thought I would. I just assumed, I would be watching 4 or 5 hours a day. I'm not. And my wife and I are maybe watching an hour, sometimes maybe an hour and a half of TV at the end of the night before we go to bed.
Yeah,
and
you can't
for
do
the
that
most
too
part,
much, I feel like.
Yeah, and Chris, for the most
productive.
part, it's been it's been nice to turn off the battery, but like everybody else, I'm missing not just sports because that's part of it, but for me, the job also means camaraderie. It means the people that you're accustomed to being with. Yeah, so that part of it is definitely a void, and I like that. I like being part of a team. I like the collaborative process, and as of this moment, that's just not something that's realistic.
Yeah, have you been in touch with Sarah and RJ and Michael Grady, all your the crew and personalities at Yes during this time?
Yeah, we have a Nets chat, group chat for Yes, and
it's such a
so
group chat.
Yeah, it's active. It's it's not a daily thing, every other day. People are staying in contact. We've been doing stuff for the Yes Network, Nets-related programming. Yeah, so I interviewed Rod Thorne a couple of days ago. That interview is going to air next week. I did one with Kenny Anderson in a prior segment, and I've done some segments with Sarah, with RJ, and those have been fun, just to connect with people. I've done some stuff for CBS as well. We had a show, CBS Connected, where we had Tom Izzo on, and we then had a Zoom bomber, Steve Smith, former Michigan State star, and then we had Bill Self on, and had another Zoom bomber, a surprise, Bill Raftery.
I like that.
Zoom bomber. Yeah. So
man.
Look, you got to do anything that can keep your mind occupied and work that muscle. I'm not going to do simulated play-by-play of cars passing my house on the street. That to me,
that won't keep you
that's
fresh,
not really going to get it done.
Keep you going?
No. But yeah, everything has been okay. But like everybody else, I'm getting antsy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's been like 2 months now. Over 2 months we've been in this lifestyle. But transition now. Want to talk a little NBA Nets, try and talk that. Just in your honest opinion, you think we'll get the game back at some point?
Yeah, my sense, barring any major roadblock here with the direction that we're headed in the country, my sense is yes, the NBA, they want to play. They want to resume the season. They want to crown a champion. It's not going to look like the NBA that we're used to. They're going to have to do it in one location. It appears Orlando is the spot. But they realize that from a financial standpoint, it's really important. Yeah. And even just for the demeanor of the nation, to try to lift people up and get them interested and engaged and give them entertainment, it is important. It's important on a number of levels. So, look, Adam Silver is an extremely bright man. He is not going to just go into this haphazardly. He recognizes that everybody will be watching how they handle things, how they protect their players, how they protect their staff. Health will be of the utmost importance. But with that said, there have to be measures in place where if you restart and one player tests positive, it can't shut it all down. They have to have contingencies to pull that player and then do everything necessary to make sure the other players are still healthy. But yeah, if you're asking me my gut feeling right now, my gut feeling is they're going to play.
Yeah, I hope so. And I hate to be negative here, but I'd like to get your thoughts on this. But do you think, depending on who, if basketball does come back, we get a champion, do you think there might be a little bit of like an asterisk on this season? Not in terms of that a team cheated, but how it just, this season is just, might be like unlike any other. Like, who knows if and when the game comes back, if the Lakers, Clippers, Bucks, Celtics, if they'll be the same team. Like, what if we get a Pacers Nuggets NBA final? Do you think maybe there might be like, as when we look back on society, there might be like an asterisk a little bit on the champion if it's not one of those big teams?
Yeah, my feeling is no, that we're all in this. We all understand what's happening. If anything, there might be an asterisk on the entire year of 2020 in all walks of life. So for the NBA, I think back to the work stoppage year, and they crowned a champion at the end of that, even though it was an abbreviated season. And nobody looks back on that and says, well, that didn't really count. No, it counted. San Antonio won the title. And it's not as if when you mention all of Greg Popovich's accomplishments, you toss in, oh, but he won one of the titles during a work stoppage. You don't. The majority of the season has been played. We know that part. And although it will be very different and very unique, everybody is going to be given a fair shot to go out and win this thing. So to me, no, I don't think it'll be tainted. I don't think that people are going to give you the the epilogue at the end of every conversation in regards to the 2020 champion. If we play basketball and they have a postseason, then it's fair and square. Whoever wins gets to lay claim to the title. I have no issue with that.
And then going back to broadcasting, obviously, if and when the game comes back, there's probably not going to be fans in the stands. And we talk about how the players are going to have to adjust to that. But I was also curious how the broadcasters would adjust to that too. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's got to affect you guys if being there, no fans in the stands. How do you think you would adjust to that?
Yeah, Chris, I think first and foremost, I'm not even sure broadcasters will be there. There's a very good chance that broadcasters could be in a remote studio calling it off a large monitor. So the part that is yet to be discussed is not relevant right now. We have to do this in stages, and the first stage is to get a schedule in place and figure out if this is realistic to get teams down in one location and make this happen. And then some of the other parts of the equation will begin to come into focus, including the broadcasting side. At this point, I think if there are regular season games, they're not going to have broadcasters travel to, if it is Orlando, to call those games. They would call them from their respective cities. If you do the Milwaukee Bucks on television, you would call the game off of a monitor in Milwaukee. And the same for the San Antonio Spurs, and the same for the Indiana Pacers. Once the postseason began, there might be a change if they feel like it's a safe environment, if they're comfortable with now introducing some what would be considered non-essential personnel, then maybe there's a chance that the broadcasters, play-by-play announcers, and analysts would be allowed at the venue to call the games. I'm not worried about it at this point. I think first step is get the games going, and then we can fill in the blanks after that.
Wanted to get into some Nets here. I'm a Nets fan going back to the days of the early 2000s. And I think big question on everyone's mind, and just wondering if you have any intel on this, if and when the game comes back. Would Kyrie Irving be healthy to play? And more interestingly, do you think Kevin Durant would be ready to play?
Yeah, I'm not sure that even Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving can answer that at this point until we see what the mini training camp looks like and what the schedule would look like. It's nearly impossible to say, oh yeah, these guys are coming back, or these guys aren't coming back. I've heard very strong opinions on both ends. Look, to me, I just look at the calendar more than anything else. And Kevin Durant suffered his injury in the NBA Finals last year. Serious Achilles injury usually takes about 11 months to recover from that and feel like yourself again. We are past the 11-month mark. We are very close to the 12-month mark. And there has been a lot of video of Kevin Durant working out, doing 3-on-3s. Some Net players have been interviewed, talked about working with Kevin, and what they see is the old Kevin Durant. Now, to snap your fingers and expect him to be what he was physically, of course not. That's asking a lot. But I do think there's an aspect of this where KD and his people and the Nets and their medical staff and their training staff will have to sit down and really weigh the positives and the negatives of coming back. Positives would be, okay, you're back on the floor, you're back in a competitive setting. The negative potentially would be, is this a risk in any way, shape, or form? The potential positive is avoiding a longer length of not playing at that level, where right now, if indeed they resume action, Chris, there's a pretty good chance they're not going to start next season until December. And some are saying maybe not even till Christmas. So the alternate possibility for KD would be he wouldn't play until nearly 18 months.
Yeah, it's a long time
after his injury. That's a long time. That's a long time for an athlete. So they're going to have to gauge what it is he wants, what makes the most medical sense. And I do think that KD and Kyrie are connected on this. Kyrie's dealing with an injured shoulder. There was a picture on social media the other day of his basketball shoes at a gym of some sort, intimating that he's back out, working out, playing a little bit, shooting around. So all of this is great fodder, but similar to what we said in regards to the broadcast side of it, it's hard to say definitively how these guys are going to handle it until we see an actual schedule and a time frame where you can put a plan into place, and until the Nets can truly see how Kevin is doing and check in on the rehab and have legitimate face-to-face conversations, not just phone calls, Zooms, and texts. Like, look them each other in the eye and say, hey, this is what I want. This is what I want to do. Everybody has reverted back to the original statement. And my only issue with the original statement, which is Kevin Durant is not going to play this season, that was the original statement, is that this is no longer the same season.
Yeah.
Things have changed dramatically. So with that, I think it does need and require probably a second look at what's best for KD.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see because like that torn Achilles tendon, usually about a year recovery time, and when they start up again, it'll probably be after that year recovery time. But yeah, like you said, a lot of factors going into it, and we'll see. Hopefully we get the game back. Hopefully, I think that needs to come first, and then we'll see what plays out in regards to KD and Kyrie. And just still sticking on the Nets, how would you describe their season prior to the shutdown? I think a lot of expectations going in. I mean, Kyrie comes. We know probably the championship aspirations start next season, but how would you have described the season prior to the shutdown?
Yeah, I thought a little bit of a roller coaster ride. There was a competitiveness to them, and there were flashes of a team that could actually go out and maybe make some noise. The improvement that we've seen from Spencer Dinwiddie and from Karis LeVert and from Joe Harris, that's real. That's tangible. You can see that if you watch the games and you follow the team. And how they blend eventually with Kyrie and Kevin Durant is how this team is going to be judged. When the head coach is let go, there's always going to be a little bit of a step back of, okay, well, what's happening here? What's the direction? And what is it that they're looking for? Kenny Atkinson did a tremendous job developing talent, working with talent. Whatever decision was made with Sean Marks and ownership was made with an idea towards the future and a look towards the future. So they envision someone else. They envision a different kind of leadership handling what is expected to be a highly competitive couple of years with KD and Kyrie under contract. This year, I think there are still pieces here that are going to be a part of this thing when the smoke clears. Yeah, DeAndre Jordan's obviously signed at a fairly large number, and both KD and Kyrie wanted him here. And some of those other pieces may not be here when they have to start making broader decisions about who they want to pay and who's in the long-term plan. So I think this was still all part of Sean Marks' process of identifying talent, see who works well with whom. And I would think if the team and the NBA comes back, there's still going to be an assessment period for not just Jacques Vaughn as the head coach, but for these players, especially if Kyrie and KD come back. They get a chance to see it in living, breathing color as to whether or not this could actually work.
Right. And you had mentioned it a little bit before about the Kenny Atkinson, the Nets parting of ways. Just what was your initial reaction to that? Because I was a little surprised. It came on a Saturday morning right after a big 20-point win. But I guess what was your initial reaction given that it came after that 20-point win? And then once the smoke kind of cleared and things settled in, what was your reaction then?
Yeah, I was surprised. I did not expect it. I did not anticipate it. But the more and more that you hear after the fact, there were conversations taking place between Kenny and Sean, and there's the possibility that Kenny sensed that he was not going to be part of the future, or at least there was no guarantee that he was going to be part of the future. And when you know that, and knowing Kenny and getting to know him the way that I have the last 3+ years, I could see him easily in that conversation saying, hey, if you don't want me to be a part of this, I get it, but then I don't want to be a part of it now. Let's do this.
Right.
And I don't know if that's exactly how it went down, but I could envision that. I could see it going down that way. So look, these things happen in sports all the time. It's harder when it's someone that you really respect and their work ethic is through the roof and their story is tremendous and their moral fiber is excellent. And Kenny checks all of those boxes. I think he's going to be a head coach in the NBA again. He might be a head coach as soon as next season, the way things work. But the Nets determined that moving forward, they wanted a new voice.
Did you get a sense he had kind of lost the locker room on the reporting everything that had been out there?
No, I had not gotten that sense. No, there was nothing that struck me. But again, I'm not privy to practices. I'm not there in the locker room when the head coach is talking to the players and instructing them what the scouting report is for that night. And that's really when you would find things like that out. The interaction out front in public, even just a little bit behind the scenes at hotels and when you get to the game and the bus and what have you. No, none of that really stood out. But again, Chris, I don't think it ever comes down to one game or one moment. Sometimes we get caught up in the minutia of that it came after a 20-point win or a firing came after a 20-point loss. Normally these decisions have already been made, and then it's just a matter of timing.
Yeah, and want to get your thoughts on the potential next head coach. You talked about Jacques Vaughn, how it looks like they're going to give him a fair shake at it, but are there any names out there you've heard rumored that would be a good fit, or do you have a personal opinion of who you think would be a good fit as next head coach?
Yeah, I don't know. Truly, I don't know. I think the names have been out there. Tyronn Lue is one that's popped up quite a bit because he won a championship. He had already worked with Kyrie Irving. I believe there's a relationship of some sort with Kevin Durant. But everyone thought that Tyronn Lue was going to be the head coach of the Lakers last year, and it didn't happen. So sometimes people emerge as legitimate candidates, and something goes awry during that sequence of being mentioned as the possible head coach and actually getting the job. So I don't know. I'm not really sure what it is they're looking for. I do think that Sean Marks respects Jacques Vaughn a lot, and there's San Antonio ties there, so there's a long-term relationship. And I do think he wants to give him a fair shot at this. And if this season resumes and the Nets have legitimate success, then Jacques Vaughn might be able to get this job on his own. Now, look, let's be realistic. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving will have an opinion on this, and rightfully so. The separation of church and state, I think there are some old school people that say, well, maybe the players really shouldn't be dabbling in that. Yeah. Of course they're going to dabble in that. It affects them. They're getting paid large sums of money to be the face of the franchise, so their opinion will matter. And I think we have to at least factor that in as part of the bigger picture here.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting debate you can have in regards to the management and players. And how nowadays looks like the power is kind of shifting towards the players. So, yeah, interesting debate there. But, yeah, I'm glad we hit on the Nets there a little bit. And you had mentioned it before, how you're kind of occupying time. We talked about The Last Dance a little bit. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Did you watch all 10 episodes?
Oh yeah. I was riveted. I was into it. When I broke into the NBA, it was 1994 with the Nets, doing radio the first year, and then I got the TV job the next year. So that first season, if you remember, Jordan did come back in the second half of the year. So 94, 95, they lost the Magic in the playoffs, and then the next year went on their second three-peat run. So I was fortunate that I started my NBA broadcasting career. Yeah, I got to see a lot of it and called a playoff series between the Nets and the Bulls during that 98 season on Sports Channel.
Your voice was in like the background. Yeah.
yeah. They had me on a few calls. And I was also very lucky that the job that I had in radio, my broadcast partner was Mike O'Koren, former North Carolina star and played for the Nets as well. And Mike was Michael Jordan's host on his official recruiting visit to Chapel Hill. So they never played together. O'Koren had already moved on to the NBA, but he did host Michael when he came down to UNC. So there was a relationship there. And that allowed me to be in Michael Jordan's company on a few occasions, just because Mike would bring me along. And all those rooms that you saw in the back where his security guards were at the United Center, I got to see all that.
Wow.
Because that was the only way to go see Michael pregame. And my son, Noah, was born in 1998, and Mike O'Koren said to me, "Hey, would you like Michael Jordan to sign a pair of baby Jordans for you?" I said,
wow.
"Would he?" He goes, yeah, go buy a pair. So I bought a pair, brought them when the Nets played Chicago. He said, "Yeah, come back with me." I went back with him, and he brought them with him and handed it to him. He said, "Hey, this guy just had a baby." He's like, "Oh, all right, yeah, you have a boy, girl?" He's asking me questions about my newborn. So looking back on it now, it really does strike me as these unique moments that you get to experience in the moment. I'm not sure I had the full context of what all of that meant.
Wow, that's an awesome story. And you were talking about context and how I think it's pretty crazy how 20 plus years later after this dynasty, how it's still carried and we still talk about it. But going back to that team, do you think they could have ran things back the next year and tried to go for that fourth title in a row in the 98-99 season?
No, never for a moment did I think that. In fact, one of the real highlights of my career, I got to call that 1998 finals for the World Feed. Oh, so nice. I did that Bulls Jazz series, and the talk then was very similar to how it played out on The Last Dance, that this was probably going to be it. There had been so much conjecture at that point that Phil Jackson wasn't coming back, that Jerry Krause wanted to rebuild and wanted to put his new stamp on things. So this idea now would be more revisionist history. Scottie Pippen wasn't hanging around at a low number. They knew deep down that this was it. So the talk of them coming back and try to do it one more time, that wasn't realistic. When he made that shot over Brian Russell, I think everybody knew that was probably it for Michael in a Bulls uniform.
Yeah, obviously one of the most memorable shots in NBA history, the crossover and pull up in front of Brian Russell. But just when you think of Michael Jordan and everything he encapsulates and his legacy and just everything we saw from this documentary, when I say the name Michael Jordan, what comes to mind?
Greatness, more than anything else, a competitive drive that was very much on display every time that he played. He didn't take nights off. any game that I did that included Michael Jordan, there was an electricity in the arena, whether it was in Chicago or on the road, New Jersey, or I called two of the finals, Seattle and Utah. Those two finals I did for the World Feed. And you could feel it. It was tangible when you were doing your normal prep for a game in the arena and it started to fill up and there was this vibe that
I could imagine.
Everybody was coming to see this guy. And I would say it was similar with Kobe Bryant and similar with LeBron James. Those three players in particular, it just felt different. And that's not to take away from any of the other great players that we've seen in the NBA over the last 25 years. Shaquille O'Neal, tremendous. Currently, Giannis Antetokounmpo or Kawhi Leonard, Jason Kidd, all great players, all-timers. But they didn't have the same ambiance in the arena just because they were there. With those three guys, there was something very different, and there was a presence about those three in particular that you could feel. So this maybe reminded some people of that, and for a certain generation, maybe it was new information. They had heard about how great Michael Jordan was, and they got to watch it over the course of 10 episodes. And Chris, let's understand, I wouldn't necessarily call it a documentary. It was very one-sided. It wasn't.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about that.
Yeah, I think we have to understand going in, documentaries normally are done without the permission of the person that the documentary is covering. Right. Michael Jordan was involved in this. He had final say. So with that said, yes, we did get a peek behind the curtain, which was very cool. And back in his playing days, he didn't show you a whole lot of that. He showed you the pitch man. He showed you the Nike, McDonald's, Gatorade guy, but you didn't really get to see what he was all about. So I think that part of it was really nice and refreshing. And with each of the three guys that I mentioned, Chris, we've seen a little bit of a change in how they handled their public persona. Kobe Bryant, he gave you little bits of his personality, showed you that he was into rapping early in his career, and he was a little maybe deeper in his thought process and how he connected with the media, with his legal issues. That was a problem, and he took a step back from public life. But then later in his career, was almost professorial in the way that he talked to the media and about his basketball knowledge, and then the transition prior to his death, his love of women's basketball and his daughters. And then LeBron is an open book. All of his opinions are out there. He has a show that takes place in a barbershop, and he shares opinions on sports and politics and movies and culture and comedy, and his Instagram account and TikTok account. It's all there. You can see his family. You can see what he does. You can see Taco Tuesday. So life is almost an open book, and it's been interesting to see the evolution from Jordan to Kobe to LeBron, and it does reflect where we are as a society.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we share a lot.
Yeah.
That's just the name of the game. We probably overshare.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a fan of this era, the social media era.
Yep.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's certainly a different time. Because, obviously with Jordan, this was pre-social media. And I was young around that time. I'm 29. I was only 8 years old when he retired. So I don't think I could appreciate his greatness. But, it's just crazy to go back and see, like, how revered he was in that, at least by the fans in that documentary. That's one of the things that stood out, how they would show him leaving hotels and just the swarm of people that were there to embrace him. And I get the sense in today's age, I don't think people look at LeBron James like that.
Yeah, I think LeBron gets a crowd. There's no doubt about it. LeBron is internationally known, and his brand is very much out there. in the public, but it's not at the level that we saw with Jordan. And I think it has just more to do with the time that we live in, because there was no social media, that just getting a glimpse of Jordan not wearing his uniform or walking into a hotel, that would be enough for somebody. And now, because you can call up any clip on LeBron's social media accounts, you can see that. You can see LeBron behind the scenes. You could see him goofing around with his family. So the mystique is gone.
Yeah.
It's not quite what it once was.
Yeah. Because it's such a big deal to, like you said, it was such a big deal to see Jordan. Now we kind of see everything with LeBron. I don't know. Yeah, I'm just not a social media guy. I don't. You're not on the social media platforms, are you?
I am not. No, it was interesting.
You're better off that way.
In my career, I had gotten to a point where I was just high enough on the totem pole that my employers couldn't force me to do it. If I was a couple of years younger or a couple of years of less experience, I might have been in a position where the people that I worked for said, hey, we want you to do this.
Yeah.
But I was actually at a point where I got the question, hey, do you want to do this? And that's a very different kind of interaction. And because I was given the choice, my choice was no. I've got a lot of jobs. I got a lot going on. And I didn't want to just stick my toe in the pool. If I was going to do it, I was going to really do it. And I realized I didn't have the time to commit, to do it the right way, to do it well, to interact with people daily. I got too many games, got too much going on. It becomes a full-time job. So that was my decision however many years ago.
Yeah, no, I think you're better off. And I more just don't like it for the sociological effects it's had on society. I think it's a lot of people just post for ego and to, I don't know, try to get likes and everything. So I don't know. I'm kind of old school. I'm 29, but that's my mindset on it.
Yeah, I think people just with their intuition sometimes seek validation,
right? And
oftentimes it's based on that, just trying to be relevant. Look at me, pay attention to me, and I get it. That's part of life. It's just for me, it just didn't make sense. It didn't fit into what I viewed as a healthy way to do my job and do it well.
Yeah, I agree with you, and kudos to you for sticking to your guns on that. And wanted to more talk about your career now. I can't believe how long you've been broadcasting with the Nets. You said you started in '94. You said?
Yeah, 26 years.
Wow, has it just flown by?
Yeah, in some ways it has. I'm 51 years old now, so more than half my life has been spent working on these Nets broadcasts. So when you put it in those terms, it's hard to wrap your brain around. Yeah. I've done so many different sports. I've had a very packed schedule for a long time. I worked at WFAN radio coming out of college, which was like going to graduate school in many ways. It really, for me, became the perfect springboard and the place to learn about the business and learn about how all of this stuff works. And when I think about that feels like a long time ago. 1990, it was 30 years ago when I graduated, and that does feel like an eternity ago. But on the net side, it has gone by quickly. It has felt like a bit of a blur. But when I think back on it, with all the different kinds of teams that I've covered with the Nets and the different coaches and the different GMs and the different ownership groups, when I really take the time to think it through, I realize it has been a lifetime. A lot has happened. They changed arenas twice since I started with the team, going from Continental Airlines Arena to Newark and then to Brooklyn. Yeah.
Because
I'm a New York guy. Chris, originally I'm from Queens, and I was living in the city when I got the job. And eventually my wife, who was from New Jersey, said, we really should think about moving to New Jersey. And my first reaction, being a New York guy, was no, I'm not going to go to Jersey. Growing up, and I admit it now. I just had a bad perception, like so many New Yorkers. You just had a misconception. You thought New Jersey was an armpit, and then you realized it's not. Once you get there, you're like, oh wow, no, it's nice here.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to make a right turn to make a left turn, a jug handle, but big deal. That's not a huge problem. You just figure out how to do it. So in 1995, I ended up moving to New Jersey, and that's all my kids know. And now that's all I know. I see myself as a Jersey guy. So that part definitely has changed. I've lived here now for 25 years.
And I forgot you worked at WFAN. What did you do there?
I started as an intern in the summer of 1989. That was before my senior year. And then they hired me to be a producer coming out of college. I had to make a decision. I had a couple of job offers to be on the air in Buffalo and West Virginia. And
for radio?
I thought,
like
for radio.
Talk
yeah.
radio?
Yeah, it was like updates and reporter. And I thought to myself, well, where do I want to be eventually? And I wanted to be home in New York. And I said to myself, well, if I'm getting a chance to work in New York, even though it's not the job that I want, shouldn't I take that chance? Shouldn't I get my foot in the door there instead of going somewhere else and trying to work my way up? Who knows what circuitous route that would have been. So I rolled the dice, even though they told me, look, you're not going to be on the air here. We're not hiring you to ever be on the air. We're hiring you to be a producer. I said, you got it. I'm going to do that role. I'm going to do it the best to my ability, and I'm going to immerse myself in the culture of the radio station. And that's exactly what happened. And then lo and behold, about a year and a half into it, they did ask me to start doing updates and eventually doing talk shows, and eventually getting the Jets pre- and post-game job. And that was a bit of a whirlwind. When things started happening for me on the air, they happened quickly. And I took advantage of those opportunities. The net job popped up in 1994, so 4 years after graduating college. And I got the job at 25. And then another snowball effect with football and network jobs and television. So I just had really good timing. And I must say, when I was given the chance at each of these tasks, I did well.
Yeah, that'll help. Did you produce Mike and the Mad Dog?
Yeah, I was with them for 1 year, 1992. Bob Gelb was the main producer, and then I was there to run the board, and the title was associate producer. But yeah, I was there every day on that show, and that was a blast.
Oh, I bet.
Truly one of the most enjoyable years of my life, because the two of them at that point were getting along very well.
Right.
Both were at my wedding. I got married the next year in 1993. Both were at the top of their craft at that point. I think they were really at their peak. The show was killing it. They were rock stars. We would go out, public appearances, and it would blow my mind how people would react to the two of them. And their show was terrific. It just was authentic. It was real. I saw it with my own two eyes, the chemistry that they had. And honestly, Chris, when I look back on that time, that was also very educational, because I learned about chemistry between partners from them in many ways, just observing it, osmosis, realizing how important that was when you get on the air to have that kind of dynamic and trust. And I've carried that with me with all the different partners that I've had. I've had 135 different broadcast partners over the years. And I really take pride in making sure that I'm putting them in a position to succeed and to showcase their skills. It's not about me. It's about us. That's the way that I view it. And that's the way you have to. You're a team, and you got to be a good teammate.
Yeah. And that's great insight there. Great experience talking about how that taught you how to work as a team, gain that team chemistry. So thanks for sharing that. And going back to your Nets career, do you feel like I can't believe how long it's been. Do you feel like you have that connection with the team and the fan base the way maybe Gary Cohen does with the Mets or Michael Kay with the Yankees? I know baseball's a little different because it's an everyday sport, or maybe like Sam Rosen with the Rangers. But do you feel that connection with the team and the fan base doing it for so long?
Oh yeah, very much so. Very much so. Look, the Nets, they were not winning a whole lot of games when I started. I don't think that many people were paying attention to the games on radio and on TV back then. But as the team got better and as the product got better, I think there has been this connection with longtime Net fans, with new Net fans in Brooklyn. And I've been a part of it for so many years, just based on familiarity. People are comfortable with a certain voice on their broadcast.
Yeah,
so
you get accustomed to
everything
it.
that you said. Yeah, Gary's been doing it forever with the Mets. Michael Kay has been associated with the Yankees for so long. Sam Rosen, same deal with the Rangers. Mike Breen with the Knicks. Before that, Marv Albert. I do think as a fan, you just get to a point where you're comfortable. When you turn on a game, it sounds a certain way, and it makes you feel good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you've been doing this for, working in sports for 30 years, but doing the Nets broadcast for 25 years. How much longer do you see yourself, like, and you're still, like, so young, too. You got into this business at a very young age. How much longer do you see yourself kind of working in a full-time capacity with everything, I guess, with basketball, football, like, how much longer do you see yourself with the heavy workload?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still able to handle it, and the preparation, the travel, what that's going to look like, I have no idea moving forward.
If we get things back to normal, I guess I was
saying. Yeah, so I think for me, when that part of it isn't enjoyable anymore, that's probably when I'll have to make a decision. I still like the prep.
Yeah.
I still like learning about the athletes and doing research and talking to the players and talking to the coaches. I enjoy that part of the job. The travel, as much of a drag as it can be, I still like going places. I like the idea that I'm not in one place.
Yeah, you're not tired of like Milwaukee anywhere. Or those
those
cities in the Midwest, like Indianapolis.
I'm not there for very long, so they're usually quick pit stops.
Yeah.
But I love the arenas. I like the stadiums. I love that feeling you get with the fans. I like walking around downtown and just getting a sense for the city. So all of that is still appealing to me. The day that it no longer appeals to me is probably the day that I'll have to reassess. If you're asking me, hey, are you going to do this into your 70s? There's so many play-by-play announcers that do that. I don't know. I don't think so. My guess would be there will come a date where I say, hey, I'm good. I've done all the games. I've done all the travel. I don't know what year that will be, but at 51 right now, certainly for the foreseeable future, I'm going to keep on grinding.
Yeah, like I said, hope it's not anytime soon. And I want to talk a little bit about your announcing here. Part of what makes me think you're so great is, or one of my favorite parts of your broadcast is the way you describe things, your little embellishments, like, oh, Kyrie Irving, he's a sorcerer. Or Jared Allen, he's not human. How did those, the Rack Attack, how did those, calls, descriptions kind of come about? I love hearing that.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. First of all, I appreciate it. Second, and pretty good impression.
No,
I thought it was solid. I thought it was very good. I don't know if there was a day that it struck me that there can be more to announcing than just giving the player and the score and the time. But I thought it was important that your natural personality come through. And I think back to my college years, I would pepper some of my calls with a saying here. I never used rack attack, but I definitely used man's jam in college. There was a player on Pitt by the name of Brian Shorter that just nearly took down the rim against Syracuse. And I don't know why I blurted it out, but that's what came out. And somehow it stuck with me all those years later when I got to the NBA. I don't go into any season writing down a saying that could catch on. If it's natural, if it works in the moment, if it's appropriate in the moment, I go with it. And sometimes they just pop up over the course of play. Something strikes me. I like wordplay. I like alliteration where it just sounds right. And when you put a period on things and when you put an exclamation point on things, sometimes you can help enhance the highlight. It could be a great play on the court, and if your call doesn't live up to it, some people don't react the same way to the play.
Right.
So for me, very early in my NBA career, I realized, man, there could be a highlight at any moment. You have to be ready, and you better rise up to the occasion. And I do think working with Bill Raftery probably influenced me in some way, that he was just so witty, and he had nothing written down in his sayings. Everything was coming from the heart or whatever struck him in the moment. And I thought to myself, well, that's the way to do it. I got to take a page out of his book. So he never said this is how you should do it, but I realized he was doing it the right way, and I did try to emulate that.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You getting that from Bill with a little lingerie on the deck or with the blow-by.
Exactly. The kiss.
Yeah, with the kiss. Yeah, but I definitely see how you probably picked that up from him. But yeah, I mean, that's just something I love about your work and your calls. And yeah, I hope you keep that up. And I guess my last question, you talked about your son Noah, how he's home with you now, and similar to you, he got his start at a very young age in this industry, and like you said, he's already broadcasting for the Clippers radio. Just how proud of you? How proud are you of him as a father? Just to get that start at such a young age, just being such a recent graduate out of college, and to get a job with a professional team. Just how proud are you of that?
Yeah, beyond proud. The biggest compliment, if your kid is even interested in what you do for a living, that's a reason for celebration. Then it goes to the next level. It's flattering if he wants to actually pursue what you do for a living. And then when success comes, and for him it did come early, he got this incredible opportunity, and he took advantage of it. He went out there on his own as a young guy in LA, interviewed, auditioned for the job, flew back to Syracuse, then was called back to fly to Seattle to meet with Steve Ballmer, the owner, met with him for an hour, flew back to Syracuse, graduated college, and then a little after that, maybe a week or so, he got a call from the Clippers offering him this radio job.
So right out of college,
and
right after you graduated.
Right out of college, yeah.
Wow.
He worked really hard in college. He certainly didn't take the easy path. I think it would have been easier probably for him to go to a different school, not go to Syracuse like I did, and not have to deal with any comparisons or deal with any chatter regarding what I did up at Syracuse or what I've done in my career.
Yeah,
he decided to take that route, and it worked for him. More than anything else, I think it instilled confidence in him that he could be his own man. He could do it in his own way, do it with his own style. And maybe more important than any of this stuff, Chris, he's a really good guy. He just gets it. He's nice to people. He treats people the right way. Yeah, well, that's nice of you to say. I think he took in a lot during his years growing up, not just how I prepared, and how I performed on TV, but he did pay attention to my interactions with people. He would join me many, many times for a football game locally or a basketball game with the Nets. So he did get a front row seat as to how all of this stuff worked. And I got to tell you, he paid attention. He really locked in on all aspects of the business.
Yeah, and happy for him to just like take that challenge, like you said, going to following in your footsteps, and everything that you've done, he kind of had to live up to that, and so far he's done it, and so happy for him. And I know you probably get this all the time, but the resemblance between you guys, I have to bring that up. It's like Dr. Evil and Mini-Me, but instead of the size difference, it's just the age difference. Like I know you probably get that all the time, but I just had to bring that up.
Yeah, no, there've definitely been claims of cloning. I did get a call from the government at one point. They wanted to know if there was some sneaky business going on in a lab somewhere. No, we get it a lot. I mean, it makes me feel good because it means that I'm actually his father. Like, who knows? I travel a lot. You never know with these situations, but we're feeling pretty good that he's actually mine.
Oh man, yeah, good stuff. Like I said, happy for him, and just happy like you and your family are doing so well during this time, and I mean, really enjoyed it. I really appreciate you taking a couple minutes out of your day, well, more than a couple minutes, like an hour. Yeah, but
Chris, you got it.
Yeah,
my pleasure, man. Great talking to you. Keep it up, and we'll do it again down the road. And feel good. Stay safe, please.
Yeah, thank you, and to you as well. And we'll talk soon. Take care. And that'll wrap things up on this edition of the Basic Photonomics podcast. I want to thank Ian so much for coming on there. Really enjoyed that good conversation. As always, follow me on social platforms. You can follow my personal Twitter, Instagram at ChrisGrosso16. For the podcast, the Instagram is Basic Thoughts Pod. On Twitter, it's at Basic Thought Pod. And thanks again. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope everyone has a good Memorial Day weekend and continue to stay safe and healthy. And have a good one.